Hello and welcome all you beautiful people, you magnificent people, you. My name's Amaya Victoria. You are watching Wise Woman Podcasts. Today we have a very interesting woman to speak with. It should be very fascinating, our conversation. There's some things that she does that I don't know about. I was going to say, even I don't know about, as if I know everything. So let's go ahead and just start our process together. I want you to know I call you magnificent and wonderful beings because you can carry anything, any form of suffering, and still want to live, grow, change, and flourish. And if that's not magnificent, I don't know what is. So, my name is Amaya Victoria. You're listening to Wise Woman Podcast. And today we have as our guest a woman who has layers of wisdom and experience to speak about, to bring to us for the welfare of human, woman, and mankind and everything else in between. And well, we'll see. I think it's beyond even the heavens at some points, or just some heavenly, I just don't know. So I'm glad to have as my co-communicator here a woman who goes by the name of Jesse An Nichols George, but definitely by the name An, A-N. So for the sake of the fact that that's her frequency, that is the name I will be calling her. As you can see on the podcast here, you can see her full name, but we will use An for the sake of that frequency and for what she has done and what she does and how she came to be with us here in this world. You know, it's very interesting. So I'm I is a 13 plus generation spiritual healer, energy tuner, spiritual and wellness coach. She is also a 13th plus generation Druid practitioner, honoring and appreciating the harmony of all things and working with the natural cycles of life. This bloodline history includes everything from freedom fighters like George Washington, a lead translator and Hebrew scholar involved in the original translations of the Bible, a four-star general in the Air Force, royalty, Apache and Cherokee Indian, which is very close to my heart, European farming, many of the Celtic and Northern European influences, as well as a bit of Norse energy, just a bit, a tad of Norse energy. As a Magi, An works with all star seeds, soul grouping, and existences. Welcome, my dear, to
Thank
this
you.
podcast. So there is much for us to talk about here. I want to start with the word Magi. Let's talk about Magi and what that word, the definition of that word, what that word is meaning for you and your expression on this planet. We'll get to who Jesse was before in a moment, but
Mhm.
let's start with the word Magi because I tend to go after what jumps out on the page at me. Is
Well,
it
and
goes,
that's
I think,
fine. And that's great because whatever's jumping out is exactly what we need to bring out right now.
right.
So, as a Magi, there can definitely be many layers. As you mentioned, I work with pretty much every grouping out there um, and work through pretty much every existence. We've got a hand in it with my Magi team. And we're particularly active in times like we're seeing now on our Earth, where we have a lot going on and it's critical turning points and the big stuff is happening. And my team was involved when Atlantis was having its big things going down and Lemuria having its things going down and many other cultures as well. So as a Magi, we're really rooted in wisdom and particularly connected to the wisdom of compassion with one another. We do our best to bring people into aspects of wholeness, recognizing their wholeness, remembering their wholeness, and being in that space where they're feeling complete. Because oftentimes when people incarnate, now Magi's don't often incarnate. It was kind of a unique situation for me to be here, and but we really focus on bringing that information out to people so that they can take hold and be on their own and not get locked into the distortions that can happen as we go into denser vibrations. I don't like to use the terms lower and higher, but We have denser and lighter vibrations, and oftentimes when we incarnate, for example, in this type of a dimension, people are oftentimes getting disconnected from who they really are. They're only remembering or seeing or working with a piece of themselves. And so with the information we work with, we help to re-trigger that memory, that awareness, so that they can be there. So really when we look at it from the aspect of the language that I work with, the codes, the pieces that I bring forth, it really is about this completion, this abundance, this fullness, and these turning points, completions of cycles and starting of new cycles. And it's done in a very, I don't know if maternal is really quite the right word. I think maybe nurturing.
I'm thinking that as you said.
Nurturing the wisdom that is the sacred gift of God that allows us to find the peace and the stillness. And that's the essence of a Magi.
Okay, when you said Magi, you kept saying we. So why? What is we with Magi? And also, you began to introduce the next question for me, inevitably, which is from that other perspective, not what we're like, the mud baths we're rolling in right now, which is not a bad thing. I lived in New Mexico, and they had it just burnt down too up in Ojai. They had the hot springs, and they used to have this mud, this clay. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. What a thing to do on a podcast. Anyway, your stuff happens, right?
Right.
This clay that you put on yourself and let it dry and then wash it off, because it was very healing. So there's nothing wrong with rolling in the mud, but there is so much going on in these layers that we could, the denser layers or the fear-based layers or the layers of letting go, that we could really get caught in. At this point, many have really gotten caught in tremendous suffering. It really breaks my heart. I know it's all agreed upon, but with the Piscean overlay, I cry about everything. I'm an Aquarian. My daughter says to me, "You're the mushiest Aquarian I've ever met." I said, "Oh, I would not wish a Piscean overlay on anybody, really, in some way." So, because it's all emotion, but it makes me who I am with the intuition. So, Magi, we, and then you began to speak about this, the eloquence of the divinity, of the sacredness that is. And then we're going to talk about something you put here that I want to open up for the people to hear on you about, and then we'll talk about the second paragraph here. Okay.
So when I say we, I am part of a team, and
Now, is that team in the physical or the spirit?
That is a team that we are both. Okay. We are both. We can incarnate. Most of the time, Magi's do not incarnate.
Okay.
Again, very unusual or unique circumstances when we do. So when I say we, it's because I am part of a team, and we're going to get into another member of my team in this as we move along.
Okay.
And actually 2 other members of my team as we move along. So
okay.
I actually have others that I work with, and we work together to, again, try to keep this balance and this wholeness memory in the souls that are incarnated, in the people that are
you began to
living.
speak about that, when many times souls incarnate, they forget, and you went on to something else. Can you speak about that for a moment? Because you were talking again about the wholeness, the completion of cycles, because that's, we're in critical mass right now, but it is a completion. So
yes, and this is a big thing, because usually if we're incarnating in a lighter dimension, whether we're talking 5th, 6th, whatever dimension, we don't lose that connection in the incarnation the same way we get that disconnect when we incarnate here. So as a baby, we still actually have, to a certain amount, a connection, but we are very wrapped into the physical experience, and we're absorbing all the physical, so our attention is going there. And as we're going through life, we're really just kind of drawn and held into this physical aspect. And it's not that we 100% don't realize that we're something other than just the body, but we're so absorbed in the human experience that we fall into these needs, this lack kind of energy, this trying to fit in energy type of thing. So we oftentimes will spend many years trying to fit in, or trying to learn things, or trying to get a grasp on what's happening here. And so oftentimes it's later in life when we really start to come into the more complete awareness, or we start to unfold the layers as we're releasing actually a lot of the material pieces in life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of saying, hey, I'm ready to simplify again, and I'm ready to get back to some basics. And I, really don't want 10,000 things to take care of in my life. I just want to kind of keep it simple. And so we start to come back around the more we're living, and we've kind of looked at life and said, well, okay, I've done A, B, C, or D, or things like that. And we release that absorption in the material. And we start to come back around to who we are and making that connection again. So I really do see there's kind of that, it's not that we're truly separated from the spirit, but we're so absorbed by the human experience that we kind of let that go and forget about it temporarily.
It seems that the yourself and about four other people that I've interviewed for the podcast, there's this theme coming out of this, which is inclusiveness and cohesiveness. It seems like that this is really the name of the game right now, whatever that means, because those words have definitions that it's like trying to describe the face of the great creator. It's impossible. Or how what chocolate tastes like, or what love feels like. These are things that we must experience. And that's also about what you're beginning to speak about, is to experience the physical, but also know that we're here to go to become more than that. I don't have the words. I don't want to say go beyond, because this makes like something like we have to just drop off, like it's not good enough. It is.
Right.
It's as sacred as any other reality. And you began to mention the fifth, sixth, seventh, and you stop yourself. How many realities, how many realities are there really active right now, going on beyond the earth reality?
I don't think we can really put a number
Okay.
on the realities, and I don't think that we need to put a number on the realities, because that's a shifting and a mutable piece
Okay.
that is constantly adjusting, because we have realities that are constantly merging into other realities, and then we have pieces that are breaking off from realities and creating new realities. And so we could probably get into infinite layers.
That's right. As you're talking,
when we look at that, because
yeah, this is like the encyclopedia of things right now. So
yeah, if we think about every choice that we have along the way, from literally the clothes we put on in the morning to what time of day we brush our teeth to, I mean, just even the most minute things, every one of those is creating another reality in a sense.
mm-hmm.
And that's happening in every existence.
All the
And
time.
so it just,
Yeah.
it cascades and cascades and cascades. And yet this is where, we could go into layers and layers and layers, because you have these multitudes of where all of this exists and nothing exists, and the polarities are there, but the polarities don't exist because we're all one. And you can keep going in these multitudes of circles, around and around and around in those spirals. And so I think when we come into these incarnations so many times, again, what we're doing is we're adjusting to the vehicle that we're in.
Right.
And so it takes time to learn how that vehicle works. It takes time to grasp how the world is working, which is what a lot of our childhood years are about, is learning, how do I function in this world? What is it about? What's going on here? And gathering that information through our experiences.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully As This World Turns. Used to be a soap opera in the East Coast called As This World Turns. I don't know if it went across national life. As this world turns, our children will be taught differently. We will
Yeah.
be able to, one of the good things coming out of this bomb blast that occurred is we have to reassess how we're teaching the children. Really reassess it. And what we're
Yes.
teaching them. Or what they need to teach us, you know. They need to teach us more than we need to teach them some days. You know.
Well, and we know we're always teachers and we're always students
Student.
simultaneously.
Right.
And we each have something to share and something to pick up from others. And I think we are at these points in this existence in particular that there is a lot of restructuring and a lot of rethinking how we're doing things. And even among all of the turmoil, what it's really showing us is, hey, this is what's not working. And this is where we need to step up and rethink what we've been doing. We've kind of gotten complacent as a human race here, and we need to come back around, remember who we really are, and start bringing that into this world, into this existence. And in doing that, there's so many amazing things that can happen. And we've gotten kind of off course and very distracted with the earthly things that we've stopped teaching a lot of the things that were important. I was actually thinking about this the other day because my mind constantly is going to, I wonder what I could do to get off grid completely. I wonder what this would take or that would take, or
Right.
how I would maneuver this. And my head always kind of goes in that direction a little bit when I get some downtime. And the other day I was thinking, wow, what we really should be teaching our children is we really should be teaching them things like discernment. We really should be teaching them these life skills of how to read the land and to read the weather and to understand that connection, to understand when the birds are doing certain things that indicates other things, to understand when the earth or the soil is doing certain things that is telling us what's happening. And so everything that we really need to know is in those kind of components,
Mm-hmm.
these real pieces. And these are the pieces that connect to the non-tangible cycles, the cycles that are truly the essence of who we are
Mm-hmm.
and true nature, instead of just filling their heads. And it's not wrong for them to learn, these other pieces of things that they teach in schools,
Right.
but
We need to be able to communicate with each other and read and write, because that's
right,
what we're doing still on the planet. So, or how to,
we need to come back to these basic fundamentals of, you know, teaching them these pieces of learning the land, of learning nature, of learning the elements. And I don't mean that in a
no, it's
totally
fascinating.
esoteric way, but even in
No,
a practical way, in a
practical.
way of
Right.
just um, that brings us back into a connection.
Yes, it's fascinating. I'm shaking my head, not at you. No, I'm just in wonder of the movement of the universe. It could make me cry on podcast here, because every one of you that I've asked to do come here. Now, maybe it's just my intention. Who knows, ma'am? I don't think so. I think it's just divinities. It's always coming back about the earth and about the children. We're constantly, I don't even ask the question sometimes, and it just moves back to how the earth, you know, I say to people all the time, you've probably seen it come up on my Facebook page, besides some of my hysterical stuff. You've probably seen it come up on my Facebook page that I'm saying, go to the earth. The earth can teach us faster than anything. And we had that those first 3 months. We had peacocks down in Los Angeles. Go figure. I still don't know where they came from. Unless somebody opened the zoo door somewhere and said, here, go surprise the people. I mean, peacocks. We had bison or buffalo on Catalina Island over here. Dolphins back in the Venice Canal in Venice, not here in California, but in Europe. Our air began to clean up in 3 months. I thought for sure in my small mind that it was going to, once we were gone from here, it was going to take her forever to get herself back online. No, she's like, no, 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 no. You go back inside for a bit. I gotta do at least a moment's cleanup. Okay, I'm gonna sweep the floor for a minute before you start throwing stuff around again, and watch, pay attention, because this is where we're really going.
Well, and it's amazing how little time it takes for nature to restore itself.
Right.
It really does. And in the scheme of things, I mean, yes, we're in these critical turning points, but it is also an aspect of we want to learn how to harmonize with nature. Nature can handle a lot, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of information. I think we'll probably see more information coming out in regards to the earth and the panic and the scare and people being driven into this fear as if earth can't take care of itself. Well, earth has taken care of itself long before man. It's made, species extinct. It's brought species in. It's based in eternal, immortal love. And with that, it carries codes of immortality. So I really don't think it's going to go anywhere in that kind of a code
Zoo.
pattern. The
Yeah.
only
Right.
question is whether humans are going to be a part of that process.
Right. Right. So we're segueing, as it always happens. The miracle. When two or more are gathered in its name, that miracle of just going in that direction. I want to speak to you about being a walk-in.
Mm-hmm.
What Ruth Montgomery, I was telling you, and I'm older than you, obviously, I guess, but I'm not, I was 15 years old when I picked up my first book in the library, because this always interested me. And it was Ruth Montgomery, and it wasn't the book on walk-ins, but later she put a book about walk-ins and the influx of walk-ins from that time into the 2000s. So I will call you a walk-in. I don't know how you would call you a Magi. I imagine that's what you would call yourself. So An, because I'm going to call you An from now on, because we're talking now about you coming in, but we need to talk about Jesse for a moment, because without her body, you would have walked in. So we have to give her some honor and give her honor for her history, and whatever residue she left for you to clean up, and whatever residue she left for you to gather and use well in this world. She must have been a lovely woman on some levels, or it maybe right up front, and she just had to go. She couldn't tolerate, or the agreement was for her not to stay for all this. Who knows? You have to tell me, because you were probably interacting with her much more than I was. So.
Well, as part of her Magi team, as part of being on the same Magi team, we had a very close watch on her, because we really didn't want her incarnating during this time, knowing what we were headed into on this planet.
Okay.
And she felt a very strong responsibility and obligation to oversee some certain things regarding certain people here. And so she did incarnate in.
So it's more personal relationships for her to come in and work with. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Right. For her, it was more personal. And I'll mention, because there are walk-ins out there, and a couple of things about walk-ins. They can come in a lot of different ways. There's different situations they can come in. Sometimes it's due to trauma. Sometimes, sometimes it's just a soul has to get out for one reason or another. The reason why that person was most likely talking about an influx of walk-ins starting to present themselves is because we extended human life by quite a bit. And as the world has become denser here, and the energy's heavier here, and there's been a lot more to take in here, mentally, emotionally, physically, all these things, the walk-ins started coming in as giving people a break, giving people a relief. Because, before they may have came and lived a life of 40 or 50 years, or, 60 was a pretty long life, but now we have people that are living to be 70 or 80. We have people that are coming in under much more intense situations. And so the souls really are not always here to just stay an entire lifetime. It kind of depends on the individual soul and the circumstances, and sometimes the trauma that runs through the human existence takes its toll in a certain extent. The soul can handle anything, but it's kind of, it takes its toll, and it's like, okay, I need a break and need to do that. Now, for me personally, it was a situation where we had watched Jessie go through a lot of different things in her life, and she kept us very busy on the other side, making sure she was okay, because she was a beautiful soul and a pistol and a half at the same time, very independent, very not going to be told what she was going to do type of person, and yet very caring and very loving and very compassionate. And so with these things, as she went through life and had these experiences, and I've got some interviews on my YouTube site, Jesse An Nichols George, that actually is a 3-part interview if somebody wants to go more in depth. And also in the book that gets put out every year, The Code Journey, it has the story in there, the full story. And so I want to try to kind of consolidate it down for this show. Right. But the gist of it is that she came in with a certain purpose. Life got very, very tough. And as she was trying to unfold more and more of how to bring things into the world that would be helpful for people as they're going through this life process, and to help them be able to stand on their own more and more, then she had to make some very tough decisions and leave a parent that wasn't doing well after one had already passed away. She had moved to be close to this parent, and then all kinds of things unfolded, and she ended up going on the road, going from a 2,400 square foot house to a 24 square foot vehicle. Mm. And in the process of this transition, she was out doing prayer work on a creek where she came across a cat that had been abandoned or something out there on this creek. And it was starving to death, literally down to 3 pounds, practically skin and bones, eyes crusted over. Oh. And she said, yeah, this isn't just a cat. And she saved it from going over a waterfall in the area. And she kind of was like, you know, I can't really take a cat in right now. Like, this is not good timing for me to be taking an animal in what she was looking at. And so anyway, she did end up taking this animal in because she knew that this was like her life pretty much depended on this sort of situation. Like somehow there was a connection. She had to do it. She took it in. This cat traveled on the road with her for 11 months. That's how long she had it. And they did full day hikes together all over the country. This cat would have, she came to name it Orly, and they were twin souls. They were one soul. Mm-hmm. And this was her real love that had come and gone throughout her life in different forms, and was there to remind her that she was a Magi. Mm. And that she did have this wisdom that she needed to know. And these pieces were unfolding along the way. And Orly was about 13, as she came to find out, 13 years old when she rescued the cat. So it was already older, and they didn't give it a lot of chance to survive, but it did. And they took this 11-month, 1.5 trips around the US touring and being in the vehicle and hiking and all these things. And they would go places, and bikers would hold up their biker gangs to get a picture with Orly. And Orly would melt on the New Jersey boardwalks, 300-pound, 6.5-foot guys. You know, they probably were mafia guys for, you know, yeah, right. East Coast, that just would melt in the face of Orly, who was just like a large kitten size, and walked on a leash and took nothing from nobody. And that cat had standing reservations at restaurants. Anytime they were going through, it was an amazing journey. But of course, that time came where Orly passed. And Jesse was hitting very, very hard times, and Orly passed on the road. And she was gifted with a quiet place to be to allow for that. And um, everything. And it was in that grieving process over Orly that the code information really unfolded, because Jesse was reflecting on their experiences and the different responses that Orly had places and what was going on. And she started piecing together the codes, which is really a language for us as Magi. It's our language. And it blends probably over 50 different modalities, practices, belief systems, cultures into this language for us. And so we work with things like names and words and numbers and things like that, kind of similar to a numerologist would work with numbers, but nothing's used in the traditional way. And then that's taken and that's translated into our own language and understanding, because like every component tells an entire story. And then we take that and we bring that back into.
Yes, I'm going to stop just for a minute because I want to back
Yep.
up for a sec. So did you merge with Jesse, or did she step out and you, because you're from the same soul source, so was it just
Yeah.
a merging, or did Jesse go ahead and get relieved of the lifetime and then a group of you took over? With being the
She
primary
actually
expression of it.
she actually stepped out
Okay.
and I stepped in, and I had the opportunity coming in as a walk-in, which I just came in about 2.5 years ago
Really?
now.
I
And
would
it
know that
came
since
down
I've
to a
been
very
around for quite a bit
critical,
of time. Yeah.
yeah, it came down to a very critical point where Jesse was in danger
Mhm.
with some circumstances that were going on in her life. And through those circumstances, we just said, we have to get her out. And she was kind of worried because it was like, well, you can't just throw anybody into a body when you've opened up this code work and you've opened up this source of wisdom.
Right.
And whoever came in had to be able to take that over. So we couldn't just grab any walk-in and throw into this body.
Right.
And so that's where I came in.
That's what
I
you
was the
expected.
one that could step in. We needed to make sure we got Jesse out of this body, connected fully with Orly. So they are merged. They're connected
Good.
now.
Good.
And their love impacts every existence. It was critical for every existence for them to be safe.
Yeah. So I just want to ask one thing, and I do want to go on to something else
Uh-huh.
immediately. Do you remember coming in? Are you allowed to say
I
anything about
do.
that?
I do actually, because Jesse had had some pretty hard things prior to me coming in, and I spent about 2 months sharing body with her,
Okay.
and then she released.
Ruth Montgomery writes about that, how it can be a sudden thing for trauma, but it can also be a merging of both beings, and they both stay, they just kind of merge. Or it could be that they're together for a while and then the one that just leaves out and leaves the other one in. So that's very interesting. I want to move over now to the coding, because we've written quite a few books here. Thank you very much. Once again, the glasses, folks. I'm trying to think, I can look at this without I don't know what that denial's about. I guess it's aging for me. Okay. So we have Embraced by the Divine, the Emerging Woman's Gateway to Power, Passion, and Purpose. And 7 other books that you have not said what their names are here. You have the Code Connection, the International Radio Show, and the Genesis Clearing Statement. I would like to talk to you about being a code interpreter, But I want to speak about something else, and I even just said in another, the one just before you, someone else is interviewing, I don't want to talk about COVID, I want to talk about politics, but I feel that in this place, to look at it really from the coding place, what's really, I don't even know what's being taught us, what's being said, what we're supposed to be watching, what language, what is, I feel like the woman from the movie Poltergeist standing on her lawn as her house collapses and goes, "What's happening?" It's like one of those things, even though I know more than that. But as a human being, every so often I'm like, what? So maybe you can help me and many people with this process of COVID, the politics, not so much the politics, but what's behind it. We don't have to get into all those things because then we'll wind up with a lot of people arguing, and I don't want that. Our arguing is killing us. It's enough. Enough. We have a right to disagree. Now we got to get beyond it and get going. And I know that's my impatience because I just got tapped by spirit going, it's going to play out like it needs to play out. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. And don't forget we're here. They told me that last week when I was utterly distressed, and they were like, "You're all forgetting we're here and we're going to help. We're going to mitigate this. We can't take all of it, but we're going to change it. So don't worry. Let everybody go like this because that's what needs to come out. But we're here and we're going to help." So Spirit's going to help, obviously. So you go ahead. I'm going to be quiet now, and you can take it from whatever angle you want, as long as we're not getting into that dense level about attack and blame. Can't happen. Not on my watch. Not a year.
Well, you're right. Between Jesse and I, we've put out a lot of different books, and she actually wrote her first two books were Activating Compassion, and then she created a companion workbook to that. And then she created a book called You, Me, Life, Dreams, which is based in relationships and creating and building and developing positive relationships, particularly personal relationships, and understanding the different types of personalities and how they interact. And she created a workbook for that. Then she was involved in, as you mentioned, Embraced by the Divine, which is a wonderful book. It's women's anthologies, angel stories, dark nights of the souls, all kinds of personal journeys. It's a collaborative work that she was a part of. And then she started into the code journey work, which is what I'm here to carry through. And the codes are incredibly powerful for helping us to understand. And matter of fact, part of the title or the subtitle for the book is A Daily Guide for Life on Earth. And so it really is all about working in this divine flow. It's all about being in alignment with the energies that are present on a day-to-day basis, a year-to-year basis, a month-to-month basis. And it brings in information for all of these different influences that help us stand in our own personal strength with whatever is happening in our life. And for a lot of people with this work, they've really found it to be just a huge asset to helping them really understand what's going on. And they'll look at the book and they'll go, "Oh yeah, this is that time that we're going to get all of this exposure coming out in the world. We're going to find out who's telling the truth and who isn't telling the truth. And the people that are going in this direction are the ones that we know are corrupt." And so it's very good because it doesn't tell you specifically you have to do this meditation for 20 minutes today. It's not like that. It's really more of an inquisitive aspect of getting you to open your mind up, and it unwinds the programming. So as a coding interpreter, again, I'm interpreting, I'm taking letters and numbers and words and things like that. And everything has that. I mean, if you just look even in a room and you think every color, every texture, shape, everything has a coding vibration to it. And all of those things are interacting and overlapping. So what I do is I'm gathering all that information, put it into my own language, and then bring it back out into our language that we use here, where it's easy to work with and easy to access. And it gets people asking these questions of, what about this? Or what if things were this way? Or, honing in on these key points on a day-to-day basis. And so it unfolds, it unwinds this understanding of what's happening. And I repeatedly get that from people. It's like, this makes so much sense to me now. Now I understand like why somebody is reacting all of a sudden today and they didn't react for the last 2 months over the same thing. Or I can now see who's walking in alignment or who's not walking in alignment. It really helps us to get in there. And when we talk about something like COVID, the very interesting thing about it is that from a code perspective,
Yes.
it is about responsibility. And it's getting people to stop listening to all of this input from everybody else and to start doing your own work, to make yourself come to a point where you can stand on your own and you're not reliant. And that standing on your own is not about excluding everybody, but it's about being strong on your own so that you're not dependent on other people. You can still enjoy interactions with people. You can still listen to them. You can still take in what they might have to say, but you're not allowing them to manipulate you in the direction they want you to go. You're learning to stand true in yourself. So it brings in a huge aspect of accountability and responsibility and getting down and doing the work that needs to be done. And so it's really a catalyst for us to become accountable and responsible as a human race, to stop messing around and playing all of these games. And when we talk specifically about COVID-19, it has other aspects and other layers to it that connect to our abundance, to our ability to be humanitarian with each other, to operate in compassion with one another. And it can make or break our abundance right now in this world. When we look at, again, even deeper layers than that, then we start to get into these components of unfolding our abundance through turbulence, of forcing people to stand up for themselves and to stand up for what's right and to stand up for holding divine presence on the earth. It also brings in components that are about not allowing the materialism to consume us or to consume our spirit in things, even if we have to take a little heat for not following the pack or following the crowd and things. It also brings in components that are connected to death and rebirth. It connects into components that are about purifying, moving on, letting go, and releasing what is no longer working for us, and stepping into or transitioning into other aspects. But in that process, there can be literal death, and we are seeing that. And we touched on this earlier. There are souls that have incarnated at this time specifically to help us move through this transition. Specifically, even though it's hard and it's challenging and we don't like some of the things that are happening, to get us to a point that we are remembering that we need to uphold the divine presence first and foremost. We need to hold that sacredness for it to exist, and we need to stand up for that and not just be lost in all these earthly things. There's nothing wrong with having earthly things. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. But when we become too complacent and we're giving that priority over God or giving that priority over the divine presence, then we're running into issues. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble in that aspect. When we look at the particular year that this came in, and I'm kind of going here, another one of the deeper layers on COVID-19 in particular here on Earth is it's about the past repeating itself. And we're seeing that a lot in the COVID incident, we're seeing a lot of the past, particularly from 100 years ago, and in connection with the Atlantean culture
I was
when it
thinking
was
as you're
here.
talking, I'm thinking this is full cycle to the Atlantean.
Yeah,
And the Atlantean
it's
culture wasn't bad. They made an error with that crystal. It was really an error that they
yeah.
made. They weren't trying to kill or attack anyone. It's just that that crystal just was not positioned properly. So
And people again, when you look at the Lemurian and the Atlantean cultures, they became complacent
yes.
and they didn't stand up for upholding things. They just kind of gave in and let everything be taken over.
Why don't you speak
And
about that a little bit? Because I was thinking that yesterday exactly, not just Atlantean, but I'm Jewish by birth. So I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia where the immigrants, I'm third generation on one side and second generation on the other side, having come here. And I would hear them talking Yiddish and Hebrew. And when my grandmother didn't want us to know anything, they would talk in Yiddish to each other, of course, above our heads, And I would hear my ancestors say, never forget. And I would want to slap my forehead after a while and say, my God, can't you not put anything down? Can't you just put this down? I mean, it really got to a place as I came to my 20s. I was like, God, we're just, it's really true about our ethnic background. We just don't want to stop pounding our chests about things. But now I understand because what goes around can come around if we don't
yes,
pay attention. What they really were saying is not only would it most likely come back around, but don't get complacent.
well,
Don't
and I think this is
forget.
it. And it comes back to, again, teaching our children.
Yeah.
And part of why the children are so important, because when we don't stress the importance of what happens, too oftentimes when you get through, say, like the Holocaust survivors or people that have been through these other existences, and they just want to protect their children from having to go through that. So they try to give them this good life and they stop talking about things. And we are not doing our children any service by doing that. We need to teach them how to identify, how to spot these things so that they can stop it before it gets to a critical point, so that they can cut these plans off before they get out of hand and get into danger zones like what we're in now.
Yes. So I didn't mean to
And
take
this
that
is
away from
very,
you.
very important.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to pull that from you. You were talking about the different cycles that were
Mhm.
coming back around for completion, I would imagine, I would hope. I mean, I think it's how we handle it,
Well,
really. And the
and
coding.
what
Mhm.
this is doing is this is coming back up again now, because we need to take a look at what has and has not worked in the past. We need to reflect on the past for solutions. We need to understand that this is a repeating cycle, and we need to decide what will allow us to move forward and provide actually true stability in this world among people, that will allow us to have that abundant future, to be in that abundant mindset going forward, and that will truly provide for us and not just put a band-aid on something or not try to just shut it down. And we can't work in uh, this retaliation mentality. And these are where we run into some of the fine lines, because it's very important, and I talk about this a lot in the code journey. It's important for us to stand up for ourselves, but to not be in battle with one another. And that can be a very, very fine line.
Very hard line when your ego, when you're hurt, when things are going
Yes.
on. I was taught by one of my teachers, I love to get her on the show, that she said she teaches about the no enemy way for all of us, really. So go ahead. You're talking about the coding. Can you give us an example from one of your books about the coding? Would that be giving anything away? Would that be inappropriate?
Well, it's very interesting because I've been working on the 2022 book. And for people who aren't familiar, I'm going to show this book again.
Okay, yeah, hold it up now.
And this is what the 2021 book looks like. I do all my own photography in it. You can see this is actually a really thick book. This book is like 700 and I can't remember how much the print numbers come out to, but it's like 675, 750 pages. And I put one of these out every year. So
There's a lot going there. You must have known there was a lot going go on in 2021 for 700 some pages to replace.
there is a lot that goes on, and some of these things I share on my social media for, that I share out. It's free, so because people are at all different points. And Jesse went through really hard times. I've been through some hard times, but with hers, there were points where you just can't afford to work with somebody or have help. So we've layered things so that people who really don't have the resources still have access to some things.
Mhm.
Um,
Beautiful.
but it's yeah, it's really interesting. So, for example, trying to think of what's a good example in here, but um, like today, it talks about that this is a day where we should have much to celebrate and where we can rest in greater peacefulness after the major breakthroughs of yesterday. This is a time for us to enjoy loving relationships in our lives. So it kind of gives us a place of where to focus our energy into, is what this is doing.
Okay.
It gives us where to hold our attention on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis. So every month it has, these written pieces, and it gets down to, reminding us that we've got to look at the successes that are happening. And we want to take that time to rejoice, because that continues to invite the divine presence in. People are naturally treating each other with a little more kindness, a little more compassion today. That's where the energy flow is. This is based on the day we're doing this.
Yes, right. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And that they're more willing to come together. So when you understand this, you can start to plan, or you can start to look at things and go, oh, this would be a really good day for me to do those interactions with people. This would be a really good day for me to work with other people, because we're going to be able to actually have a conversation or communicate, or we're going to be able to move through what needs to get done, versus say another day that might have energies that are more combative, or people are careless, or their mind isn't quite with it, or things like that. And so I'm actually taking the dates, and I'm taking the years, and there's multiple components that go into pulling this information. And then I usually do a little piece here that'll talk about what people will be like if they're in the distortions of the energy. So instead of holding into the true space of the energy, like today, it says, for those that are in the distortions of this energy pattern, they are likely to be experiencing aspects of deprivation. No matter how much they have, they will feel it isn't enough. They will have challenges being happy and are likely to strongly focus on their losses. There will also be a tendency to make others feel guilty or to blame them for how things are in life. So this helps us identify where somebody's at, and not just that, hey, they're being a pain today, or they're not a nice person, but realizing when people were running across the unhappy people today, for example, that they're dealing with this deprivation energy, that they're dealing with feeling not good enough. Well, if you know that, I mean, some people there's never going to be anything you can do. But if you know that, then you know how to approach somebody. You know how to handle them. You realize that you're going to take a different approach with them than if they're just being greedy and selfish. And so you can also open up layers of compassion that way, realizing, okay, if somebody's feeling more insecure today, if somebody is dealing with these aspects of feeling deprived, then, I can certainly open it up and maybe pay them a compliment, or maybe hold a door open for them, or different things like that. And then each day, and also in the month and other energies throughout the book, I give these little steps that'll say, for example, I welcome you to rest in the peacefulness which naturally comes from making major breakthroughs. What if we are meant to just bathe in the energy of God and divine presence, and to fully take in what we are able to do when aligned with the soul self?
Would you speak that again? Because we're actually coming towards the end of our time together, unfortunately, because I still have layers here. I'll have you back when there's no doubt about this. You know, so. But can you read that again, please? Because
Yep.
we're getting ready to close for today.
So there's usually a few of these invitation steps, and then the questions that kind of open your mind up a little bit and get you thinking about possibilities. So that particular one said, I welcome you to rest in the peacefulness which naturally comes from making major breakthroughs. What if we are meant to just bathe in the energy of God and divine presence, and to fully take in what we are able to do when aligned with the soul self?
Amen.
So
Yeah, beautiful.
these are powerful, powerful pieces to work with. And again, we all have this collective experience where we're all getting these experiences, but we're all going to experience them in our own way. And that's the beauty of the codes, because you are simultaneously in this joint experience and getting your own experience at the same time. And you're unfolding your own journey. It's not like somebody's program that you're going through. And I don't knock the programs, because there's many great programs and tools out there.
Right.
But this is about you creating. It's about you co-creating with God. It's about you being active in your journey and unfolding your journey and taking an active role in it.
We're going to end right there. Jesse, I'm sorry, An, I've looked at the name, went out of my head. An, would you give the people information where they can contact you, please, before we go out with the prayer for the teachers and from the Course in Miracles?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And people can get more information on my website, which is compassioncodes with an S on the end.com. And then they can also email me if they want, which is my initials, JANG at compassioncodes.com. So it's actually pretty simple, and they can check it out. I'm on various social media platforms. So Facebook Messenger is a good place too, if somebody wants to get me a quick message. A lot of times I respond pretty quickly. Sometimes this time of year right now, it might take me a little bit longer because I am working on writing the 2022 book, and then usually the new books are released in the fall. But still, there's a ton of 2021 left, and it's well worth still picking it up for 2021 if somebody doesn't have that edition.
Yes, and on Facebook, you will be under your full name there, correct? Jesse
Yes.
An Nichols George. Okay.
Yes.
Just to make sure. Well, An, thank you so much for coming on today. I really mean that. Folks, you can contact An as she's spoken. You can also contact me at Amaya at amayacenter.com, or just go to my website, Amaya Center. Facebook is Amaya Center, Amaya Victoria, either and or. Instagram is Amaya Center, and Twitter is Amaya Victoria. I have to look up because I got to find the information in my head somewhere. So we'll go out, as we always do, with the prayer for the teachers from the Course in Miracles. And I always say, I read these books when it was a 3-book deal. So it's been compressed into one. I love this prayer. It's from the Manual for Teachers on page 73. It is actually the last page for the Manual of Teachers before it goes into clarification of terms. And now in all your doings, be you blessed. God turns to you for help to save the world. Teacher of God, his thanks he offers you. And all the world stands silent in the grace you bring from him. You are the son he loves, and it is given you to be the means through which his voice is heard around the world, to close all things of time, to end the sight of all things visible, and to undo all things that change. Through you is ushered in a world unseen, unheard, yet truly there. Holy are you, and in your light the world reflects your holiness, for you are not alone and friendless. I give thanks for you and join your efforts on behalf of God, knowing they are on my behalf as well. And for all those who walk to God with me, I say thank you and amen. Thank you, An. My name is Amaya Victoria. You're listening to Wise Woman Podcast. Until next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, be well. Remember this, love is the only answer because love has always been the only question. So Godspeed, God bless, and don't forget to breathe. Good night, good day, and good afternoon.